All right, now it's time for my favorite technique of this series, and this is the back attack that Gordon uses with his Kimura control to be able to shut down our opponent when they start moving into deep half. So a common defense that higher level guys use within this position is, as I'm floating here, they actually take both their arms underneath and start to pull themselves underneath while they can bridge a little bit off the ground and bump and pull themselves into deep half. This is an excellent response, nothing wrong with it. We need to be ready to shut it down. Deep half is our opponent utilizing our leg as a lever to the hip to create space so that they're able to pull themselves underneath and control the inside space. So as Kevin starts to bump me and pull himself underneath, if I stay right here and he keeps pulling himself underneath, this is a big problem for me. So if I can just, without Kevin for a moment, what he's trying to do is create this space, this big doorway, and then he's moving into it. What we're gonna look to do is drop to our left hip. So our left leg will be the leg that's free and posting. The right leg is the leg getting attacked. We're gonna drop to our left hip, and we're gonna bring our knee and thigh flush to the ground, blocking that doorway. So if I was straight onto the camera here, my legs are parallel to each other, and if I drop it, you're barely able to see my bottom thigh right now because it's right underneath my right leg. If it's back like this, there's still space for Kevin to be able to get underneath. I'm usually not going to be able to drive my knee too far forward because he's already close to being underneath me, but I'm just looking at blocking, creating a wall so that our opponent can't pull themselves underneath. Off of this, we need to get our chest up high around our opponent's shoulders so that we can start looking for Kimura control on the opposite side. It doesn't have to be Kimura control. Gordon usually does that. It can be a motorcycle grip. It can be kind of like a half Nelson. Whatever we need to establish rotational control of the far shoulder. So here, Kevin starts pulling himself underneath. I drop my hip to block him. Now, I want to try and get behind his neck. If Kevin is keeping his head completely flat along the ground here, it might be a bit harder, but I look to just get myself into this position. His back is now exposed in at least a way where there's nothing stopping me from being able to start connecting my chest to his shoulders. What Gordon does is he always gets an underhook here, either the motorcycle grip or being able to use that to get to the Kimura. Commonly, Kevin is having this arm underneath my legs so that I'm unable to get into that space. So what we need to do is use lever control to affect our opponent's structure. We're reaching to that elbow point, the very point of the elbow. So if you think about a triangle, the lever is not somewhere further down the triangle, it's right at the very tip. Grab that elbow with both hands, hand reinforced on top of hand, no thumb, so I'm going to be able to now reach from this position. I got live toes with my back leg, and I can also leg press a bit with my right leg here into Kevin, so I'm not just using my arms to try and pull open Kevin's arm. I'm pretty sure Kevin's left arm is stronger than both mine combined, but if I can use my lanky ass body to, in one motion, open that up, creates that inside space so I can start forming the Kimura or the motorcycle control. So I drop here, I'm behind Kevin's neck, this is starting to affect his posture. Grab the elbow, open it up, establish Kimura control. So my left arm that comes underneath of his arm, no thumbs, is reinforcing onto my forearm or wrist, depending on the length and the angle that this creates. It's not going to always be a perfect situation because this can sometimes be awkward depending on your body type. This hand's grabbing that wrist so that I'm creating a ratchet-based lever. So if you think like a socket wrench, it's like this. It's not straight like a screwdriver here, trying to rotate our opponent in order to maximize internal rotation of our opponent's shoulder. Create this bend, and now the lever here on the fulcrum from the elbow to the shoulder creates a hell of a lot of force into Kevin's shoulder. So here, I'm going to extend my arms up so that the wrist comes down and the elbow gets lifted up. Kevin's commonly going to keep his arm still really close to his body. That's fine. The rotation that we have control of our opponent with this cross-body rotational control, I'm controlling the left shoulder now. I'm not just like, anything can really work here to be able to control the shoulder. But we're using lever-based rotational control of the shoulder so that Kevin's unable to turn into me. If I got rid of this hook and I say I had poor Kimura control or rotational control, Kevin tries to turn to his left right now without the arm hook, turn to your left. He can turn up right now. I don't do anything to stop that. But if he tried to turn to his right, it stops him. So we have to understand how we're controlling and which direction we're actually controlling within the rotation. If it's a proper Kimura, this is the beauty of lever-based rotational control. Now if Kevin tries to turn into me, he can't go that way, and he tries to turn away from me, he can't go that way. So the Kimura is going to be our strongest. This leg that he's hooking for deep half is starting to act like a hook from back control that's controlling his right hip. So if I let go of everything else now, if Kevin tries to turn to his left, my leg starts to block his right hip. He can't turn. But if he turned to his right now, well, he's coming up. So we need to understand that we need both sides of this control so that now Kevin can't turn to his right or his left. Now I have shut down his movement. I have rotational control of him. I'm going to be able to start advancing to the back. With this Kimura control, what I'm looking to do is now rock with live toes onto my shoulder. I can even use my head if I want to. I'm bringing my knee up high behind his shoulders. His weight's all in his hips, so I need to be able to lift his shoulders off the mat. It's going to be much easier to do so I can bring this knee up nice and high. Kind of alternates depending on how your opponent's reacting and what your attacks are. It's hard for me to get a choke with my arm because of how low Kevin's head is compared to the rest of my chest and my shoulders because he's down by my hip. What Gordon typically is trying to do here is just finish a Kimura, which he does against some of the lower guys. He does that in the live rolling session on BJJ Fanatics. But he typically is looking at adjusting himself, bringing this leg out. And once he gets this here, he's going to be able to start creating a closed circuit and adjusting himself to attack the rear triangles. We can also take the back off of it. So as I'm here, Kevin starts pulling himself underneath. Look how I blocked him. If I don't drop my hips and he pulls himself underneath first, now if I try and drop, nothing happens. I prevent him from getting through that doorway first. It's easier to prevent someone entering than it is to kick them out afterwards. So here, as he pulls himself underneath, I block him. Even if he gets close to getting underneath me, he's still at least a little bit in front of my hips. See how my foot is live toes the entire time, so I'm still able to drive into him. Get myself behind my opponent's head, open up the elbow, establish cross-body rotational control with my Kimura. I need this for base. This is just dead toes laying around here. I'm not going to be able to create space to bring my knee in. I need to be able to rock him. See how I can start driving? I could even turn him all the way over here if I wanted to. Here, create space behind his shoulders so I can bring my knee up high here. This is starting to act like a chair sit, and so from here I can absolutely just bring my knee up, hip out to the side, and then start pulling myself down low so I can start setting up the back attack and going straight for the choke. Here Kevin starts pulling himself underneath. I block it. His head is still off the mat. This is commonly what's going to happen because he's first trying to pull himself underneath. So I get my chest underneath his head acting like a pillow. Because of my elbow in base here, don't just fall into your side yet. I need that mobility because if everything starts going south, I might be able to just retract back to the floating position or something else rather than possibly giving up a sweep. Grab the back of his head if I need to, or at the crown, lift it up, then move myself underneath. Elbow, open, cross-body control. It could just be a motorcycle grip on that wrist. That's how we really like doing it on the top team, but this is fantastic as well. This leg, if I want extra lever-based rotational control and you're long, I extend my leg and I'm hooking down here at his ankle so that now I'm starting to create this external rotation of his hip. If you can't do that, that's fine. Keep a hook, try and engage it as much as you can against their hip or upwards into the crook of their knee. From here, live toes, turn your opponent over a bit. Bring the knee up behind. Now that I'm here, I'm in a really strong position. We can look to kind of high step, bringing our knee out, bring it across the hip, so that we can start looking at attacking into the rear triangle. Or I can look to start pulling myself underneath my opponent to adjust myself once again to rear triangles. That's typically where Gordon likes going with this stuff. Or I can start looking at going to the arm bar or attacking the back like a chair sit. So that cross-body rotational control, stop your opponent from being able to get underneath your hips so that they're never controlling your center of gravity. Work to get behind your opponent's head and establish lever-based rotational control of the shoulder so that you can control both directions in which they turn. And then look to start breaking their alignments so that you can attack with the triangles or take the back.